right, folks, thank you for joining us. Hi, Julie. Thank you for letting us know that the comments are working. Let me fix my screen here a little bit. We have a lot of comments from folks, a lot of questions, and a couple of announcements and other information. So we are going to go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to start with some of the questions that were emailed in or we got through our social media platforms. If you also have questions, you can ask them in the comments, and we will get to them in real time and get you an answer. And if we don't have an answer, we will get you an answer. So the first question we actually got is a school question, and it's about why parents aren't getting a refund for the remainder of the school's bus contract, and also the charge for next year being asked to be paid without knowing exactly what's going to happen next year. So there's a couple of, I'll take this sort of from the shorter to the longer part of the answer. And acknowledging right up front that I don't have an answer for exactly what's going to happen next year or what schools are going to look like. The cost for a student's bus pass, if you will, the full cost is about $300 is what you would pay for your student's bus pass. The actual cost to the department is around, I think it's about $1,000 or $1,100. So that's only about a third of the cost. So for the school department to issue a refund for the portion of the year that wasn't used was challenging for a couple of reasons. We actually had to still pay about 60% of the contract, and I'll explain why in a moment. We also had we would have to issue about 1,000 refunds. The total amount would have come into, I think it's less than $30. By the time we had collected all of that information for everyone, believe it or not, we actually have to get your like a tax ID number or an SSN number for everyone. By the time we went through that whole process and did all of that, we would have spent more money issuing a small credit or a refund than we would have actually been issuing in the refund. So plus the school department actually bears 2/3 of the cost of the busing. Not a perfect system, but it's pretty common in communities throughout Massachusetts. Now the actual, sorry, my phone is ringing. Let me learn to shut that off. Oh boy. The other reason is we actually still are paid about 60% of the portion of our busing contract. The number of communities that use the same contractor got together and did that. The reason being the states actually allowed us and recommended that we do that. If we had completely cut off payment to the bus companies, and again, we only paid about 60% of the remaining value of the contract, the bus companies would end up going bankrupt, and we wouldn't have them up and running for the fall when we need to get back into school. So it's kind of a strange catch-22. The state actually passed specific legislation to allow us to do that and to allow other cities and towns to do that. So that way we can ensure that bus contracts were available and buses were available in the fall to get school started. Now, the other concern with that question is we're asking folks to pay for their fall busing, and we're not 100% sure what's going to happen in the fall. If you pay before the end of June, there's, I believe, a $25 discount per account, so per student for your bus contract. You could always wait till a little bit later in the month. We're supposed to hear next week what schools are going to look like in the fall. We've seen what they need to look like over the summer. There are some pretty strict regulations. The fall regulations have not been released yet. I don't know exactly what they're going to look like. I don't think anyone does. There's talk about a sort of an A-B rotation. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know how it's going to work with childcare. Hey, folks, a few folks that have joined us. So you could always wait till closer to the end of the month and see what it's going to look like and see if what we anticipate the school schedule and the busing schedule looking like works for you. We do need to get deposits in by August to make sure we can secure the bus company. They have to bring on staff and equipment and pre-order fuel and everything. So it's kind of a really weird, tough situation. I don't think we would continue paying busing companies if there was going to be no school in the fall. But at this point, if I had to guess, and this is just my own speculation, I think students are going to be going to school in the fall. I think learning will look different. I think schooling will look different. I don't think that it's practical that you have a day on, day off schedule for kids, mainly because of childcare, but the Commissioner of Education and the Department of Public Health are going to come up with what cities and towns have to do, and then we're going to make our model work from there. I don't think that's a workable model. We have to look at the health aspects and obviously keep everyone safe. I just don't think that that's going to work long time. So that's the short and the long answer of it. If you want more detail on the busing question, just let me know and I'll email out to the person who sent in that question. But it's a good question to ask. Busing is always challenging for schools and students. Question in the comments: if I've ever been down to Jefferson Drive to walk around. I have been down to Jefferson Drive. We have a lot of veterans housing on Jefferson Drive. It's a nice neighborhood in town. But I will take a drive by later this week because it's been a little while since I've taken a drive down there. All right, next question is what we're all here for is how are our COVID numbers? The state released their numbers on Wednesday. We are continuing to trend in a positive direction. We're seeing the same trend lines that the state is seeing, fewer and fewer people testing positive. We've actually had a very quiet week with positive test cases. We were a little surprised. We wonder if maybe there was an error with our data. Maybe we weren't getting data in, but we double checked and we are. So our numbers are slowing. We think that if there's going to be a spike or an increase in numbers as a result of the economy starting to open back up, we're still a few weeks from that. But nobody really knows the total level of immunity among the community, who's been immune, who's not been immune. So that'll remain to be seen. Exposure takes a couple of weeks to show. So day one that you open up, let's say you open up a movie theater's not open up yet and people go there. It takes time if somebody is COVID positive and they're spreading it for that to then show up. That person has to go get a test. So anything we'd be seeing now, and we really wouldn't see anything yet, would be from Memorial Day weekend. We know Memorial Day weekend, a lot more people were out and about, and there were some, family gatherings and whatnot. So we're not yet seeing any spike from that, which is a good thing. We know that Monday, restaurants opened up for outdoor dining and retail began opening up. So it's still too early to see any impact from that. It'll be 2 to 3 weeks down the road before we start to see whether or not we see an increase in numbers. And we somewhat do anticipate an increase in numbers. Both statewide and in Norwood, we're well below sort of the emergency level, if you will. But we know as the level, as society begins to open up, that level will open up. We're hoping that level will rise. We're hoping it obviously doesn't spike to the point where we need to go backwards in our phases. But we're certainly hopeful that if we continue to practice good social distancing to the extent that we can, wearing masks to the extent that you can, public health and really infectious disease control, it's about the totality of our actions. So even where we're not perfect, if those routine interactions or those non-routine interactions, if you're reducing the chance and the risk of spread, no matter what, we're going to be in a better spot than we were just a few months ago. If you think about it, by the time we knew things were spreading, we hadn't shut down society and it had begun to spread and we were all still running. I mean, if you think about before we begin shutting down restaurants and before the governor issued his stay-at-home order, how many people went through movie theaters, went to bars, went through the T and everything else. So we're in a better position. Continuing to wear your masks, continuing to wash your hands especially is important. We know there are times it's going to be hot, and I know sometimes it's frustrating to wear your mask. I'm guilty of it as well as other people are, where you need to wear it going into the restaurant, but gee, you got out of your car and you're 6 feet from the restaurant, you put it on for those 6 feet. We ask that you do. That's still the requirement. Keep the restaurant workers safe. Keep yourselves safe. So we want to keep our numbers trending in the good direction they're going, which they're going down along with the state numbers. That's a positive thing. Less contact tracing has been happening because there's less, I shouldn't say there's less happening. There's fewer people testing positive. So that's a really good thing. And we're happy to see those numbers there. Another question we got, is the town still running its testing program? Absolutely it is. I think as everyone knows, it was the first testing program that was up and running in the state without direct help from the state. We arranged that with Norwood Hospital, who's been a great partner throughout this whole process. So if you do want to get tested in Norwood, anyone can get tested. We did get a question that somebody said, it does say, we only recommend it if you have symptoms. Well, of course we do. If you're just curious, there's not necessarily a need to go and get a test, but we do know that that program is still there for Norwood residents. We have not had any positive cases from that program yet, which is great. And as you start going out into stores and restaurants again, and as you start going back to work again, the program will still be there through Norwood Hospital. Testing has become closer to universal and much more widely available, but we still have that residential testing program available and up and running as you begin to move about as the economy begins to open up. So the program is still there, and we encourage you to use it if you need it. What is the plan for town meeting as of right now? A number of town staff toured the gym this past week, and the school facilities department has set up chairs 6 feet apart. We're going to have separate check-in stations as you go into town meeting to spread out, to potentially not have a line as you check into town meeting. Public health will be on there monitoring folks and monitoring town meeting. We're asking anyone who is ill to stay home. People will be asked to socially distance themselves. I know those of you who are town meeting members like to sit next to your friends at town meeting. The chairs will be 6 feet apart, so we're asking that folks not do that. Public health will be monitoring that. We've cut down the warrant to be very short. We're hoping town meeting can go off fairly quickly so that we can just get our business done and then return in the fall. We may do town meeting the same way in the fall in the gym with 6 feet apart from everyone. We did look at outdoor options, and while that's always still a possibility, couple of the concerns were the weather, and we would be weather dependent. We wouldn't have a sustainable system for the fall that we could also use. There's also some health concerns that come up with the outside as well. In the town clerk's office over the last week, and they still have some folks to poll, have been calling town meeting members and asking them what their opinions are, would they go, and most have reported that they would be willing to go to town meeting in the gym with it being socially distant and with good practices in place. So that's what we're planning. As you know, things tend to change. So we'll bring you more with the town meeting as things go. Question, is it appropriate to use the town's test to get tested in order to comply with other states' travel guidelines? So I'll mention first the other states' travel guidelines. Maine, which some people in the chat are from Maine. I lived and worked in Maine. It's a wonderful state. Are requiring people from Massachusetts to get tested, but not Vermont and New Hampshire is my understanding. So I don't know why Maine has an issue with their parent state or their mother state, but that's okay. Sure, it's a great question. If you're a Norwood resident, it's available for any Norwood resident. I don't know exactly how it complies with their requirements, but if there's that... if they're willing to accept it, you're a Norwood resident, you can get tested through the Norwood resident program. It's for all Norwood residents. That would, I guess, be a acceptable reason to go ahead and get tested. It's not that you necessarily have symptoms, but you need it. We anticipate there will be needs for travel and other things going forward. So by all means, the resident program applies to that. We just didn't want people getting tested just to say, well, I'm curious if I have it. Let me go get tested, and then get tested every week or get tested 5 times a week. So sure, by all means, you can call that line and go ahead and get tested. I was considering going to Maine myself this summer. I don't know if I'm going to be able to quarantine in 2 weeks in Maine, and my plans may have changed, but we think that that's an acceptable use of the program. So I'd encourage you to go ahead and do that to get into Maine and other states. Although I always encourage staycations, even though I think I'm tentatively planning a trip in August. We have some great hotels here in Norwood. You can stay at them. We have some great bars and restaurants. Bars are not open yet, just restaurants with alcohol service, and we'll talk about that. So you can always do a staycation here in Norwood as well. Question, how did the election go? The election went well. We had about an 18% turnout, which, given a pandemic, the fact that we hit 18%, which is about average for a local election, there's a separate discussion to be had at one point in time about why local elections never seem to get more than 20% for turnout. But that means that the clerk's office did a great job, that the voters came out, and that people felt comfortable coming out to vote. The polls were as busy as they were for any other local election, and that's a great reflection on civic pride in Norwood. The work that the town clerk's office and town staff did, the work that the League of Women Voters did, and the work that NCM did. So we're very proud of the town election. It was our first no-touch election. There were quite a few discussions at the state level about how Norwood was pulling off its no-touch election, and I think we did wonderful with it. We did get a question about the masks. Some people had said we should have just handed out the pens and not the masks. And there's 2 reasons we actually did it the way we did. One of them is when we began planning the election, we did not have the mask order in place, and masks weren't widely available. So we worked on securing them and making sure we could do that, making sure we had them. We also didn't want we wanted as little interaction as possible. That was the whole idea behind no touch. So rather than somebody coming up and saying, well, I just need a pen, and somebody else saying, well, I need a pen, oh gee, and I do need a mask, we just wanted to say, here's your little baggie. I think I have my prop baggie somewhere. Here's your little prop baggie, or here's your little baggie, and hands off. So that's why we did that, was to make sure that it truly was hands off with the election. So kudos to the town clerk's office. Question in the comments from Doris, are newly elected town meeting member names listed somewhere, including write-ins? Not yet. It takes us a little while to reconcile that with the town meeting member names. We should have that maybe tomorrow or Monday as we go through. The write-ins always tend to be a challenge if you have one open space in town meeting and then you get 7 people who write their names in, and then it's just, you got to go through it, and there's a lot of work that on the clerk's side. I would encourage folks as it relates to elections. I know you're certainly free to vote for whoever you want and write in whoever you want. I always encourage people, if there's not a legitimate write-in candidate, don't write something in, because that ballot needs to be hand counted and tallied. So I've been an election worker in the past myself. So some people like to write in, Mickey Mouse for president or something like that. The challenge with that is we actually have to count that ballot separately, and we have to record the write-in, and that there was a write-in for Mickey Mouse or whatever it is. Some people just like to put their own name in for something, and you're certainly welcome to do that. I would never not encourage anyone to vote, but when you do that, it just creates more work for the clerk's office and for the ballot clerks and the election wardens. But you're certainly free to vote for whoever you would like. Camps and pools, we've talked about. The rec department this last week has put out a lot of information about camps and pools. They will be running, or I should say pool. We'll have Haas Pool open this summer. We don't think we'll be able to get both pools open. We're limited to about 40% capacity at the pools, so it's going to be a little bit challenging, and we need to have social distance monitors as well as lifeguards. They'll be one and the same. So it's going to be challenging, but we're committed to getting at least Haas Pool up and running for this summer. And the Board of Health worked with the rec department, and the rec department and the Board of Health worked really well together to come up with a safe plan to get at least one pool open as we try to get services back up and running to the public as quickly and as safely as we can. Next topic is Feed Norwood. If you haven't had a chance to check out our Feed Norwood Facebook page. Comment from Doris, 2 extra slots for District 1, so I wrote myself in for one of them. Better me than an empty slot. Well, we'd always rather a body at town meeting than not a body at town meeting. When you start to get in, if 10 people wrote in for those 2 slots, it then just becomes a lot of work for the clerk's office. What we may want to do at some point is you may want a local bylaw or a local option that you need at least 10 votes in, but sometimes that writing in the person, the one name, can cause just extra work for the clerk's office. It's not a big deal. But we would like town meeting to be full. We'd always want town meeting to be full, or we could always look at reducing the number of town meeting members, but there's a value, I think, to having town meeting members, having town meeting full. So Feed Norwood, the school meal program, the weekly lunch program, the daily breakfast and lunch program is going to continue through the summer. They'll be releasing specific details, but we'll have that at the 5 elementary sites throughout the summer on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We were able to get the waivers from USDA to do that. The weekly family meal program, we're not sure when we're going to pause that program or continue it over the summer. We're hoping to see a drop in the overall food needs or food security challenges that we're facing. We seem to be seeing it, but we only have about a week and a half of data, so it's going to take another week or 2 to figure out exactly where we're going to be with that. Drop-off is tomorrow at the high school for the next Mustang Food Pantry. We're going to continue the Mustang Food Pantry through June. And then we're going to decide if we want or need to do it in July or August, or if we see a drop in the need because things have started to catch up, we would hopefully shift back to the ecumenical pantry, and maybe we would help them for a few weeks or a few months. But for now, we're going to run the Mustang Pantry for the next 2 sessions, and we are going to tomorrow is the drop-off, so the Feed Norwood page has a list of all the different items that they're looking for and that they need. So if you can drop off tomorrow, by all means, do so. We're well stocked. We're hoping that the need is less, but if the need's not less, we'll be right there, and we'll make sure that we take care of everyone and we feed everyone. So kudos to all the Feed Norwood volunteers, to the volunteers running the Feed Norwood page for the town, and to all the volunteers who have brought in pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of food. We really run an amazing program. We're one of the only communities that has done this at this scale and this consistently throughout the crisis. So kudos to everyone for being involved in that. Question, when will Central Street close on weekends? Love all the sidewalk dining people about. That's our next topic, so great lead into it. Central Street is tentatively going to close. We're talking about just in front of the theater weekends. Starting not this coming weekend, but next weekend, the 19th is our goal. The only reason we wouldn't do it then is if we don't have enough equipment out. We are facing supply chain issues like a lot of folks. We've ordered tables. We're going to try to get some lights strung up across. We want that to be ready. So we want it to be reasonably comfortable when people are able to do it. But if it's not that weekend, it'll certainly be the following weekend. And that'll be just takeout outdoor seating for really any restaurant. I mean, you can bring your own lunch there and do it. But we figure it'll help some of the smaller takeout places in the area. Spot, Daddy's Dairy, Express Pizza, Two Beirut, Common Cafe that don't have a lot of space for sidewalk dining and are more or less takeout places anyway. So it'll just be a good community gathering place, socially distancing, of course. We placed 2 picnic tables on the Common, I think yesterday, the day before. They had people at them within 10 minutes of the DPW, literally dropping them off. They put one down, went to go to the truck and get the gloves to then move it, and people were already sitting there. So that Central Street will be closed on weekends starting tentatively the weekend of the 19th. We may have to push it one more week if we don't have enough barriers and plants and other things to make it attractive. And we're trying to get some lights to string across the street. We're working on something, but it's a little complicated. Everything's a little challenging, but we're working on it. I do know also that there'll be lights getting strung in between the Civic building and the OCC. The town owns both of those buildings, and something in the back there to make that sort of an attractive alleyway. As for the outdoor dining, I'll be honest with everyone, as the town manager, part of my job is to toot the town's own horn. We were ahead of the curve on outdoor dining. Before the state had even released any dates or any regulations, we were looking at what was going on in other states and learned that outdoor dining was generally what was opening first. So we pulled a team together, we adopted some interim regulations and guidelines, figured out how it would work. We started placing orders for some of the supplies we needed. They've gotten caught up in the supply chain, but that's how a lot of the orange barriers you see we were able to get ahead of time. We got everything to the Board of Selectmen. They were great. They approved it. They went along with it. And as things developed, we worked over the weekend to make sure that June 8th, which was this Monday, we had restaurants open, and you did. You had people dining out all week long. Today, obviously, the weather's a little difficult. People have been out at Limey's. They've been eating at Lewis's, and I agree with you, Eric. It's absolutely beautiful to see all of these people out there, to see people out there enjoying the sidewalks. I think personally, a lot of people just wanted to get out of their houses. They've been doing it safe. People have been wearing masks, which is important. People need to wear gloves. Not gloves, sorry. People need to wash their hands. And the restaurants have been doing great with it so far, so we're happy to see it. It'd be nice if it becomes permanent, and it just may, but there's a lot of work to make that happen. The DPW did great this week with getting the pedestrian areas set up so folks didn't have to walk in between diners. And we've seen already reapplications come in from a couple of restaurants that said, well, we're going to put 2 tables out. And they said, well, now it's 4. And they said, well, now, geez, we really need 6 tables or 8 tables. And we're all for it. I mean, I drove around last night a couple of times just going around to look at all the people there. And you would see the people at the OCC. You'd see the people at Lewis's. You'd see the people at Limey's and Biblos and Vico's early on. It's a great thing. It's wonderful. The weather is the only challenge, but if we have good weather this weekend, I think you're going to see people pack downtown, and it's an absolute beautiful thing. Downtown looks so vibrant because it is a vibrant downtown just by moving out into the open air, and it's safe, and it's just, I mean, I couldn't be happier with it. I think it's a great thing. I encourage you to find the places that are doing the outdoor dining and go visit them. We did get a question from somebody about the outdoor dining in specific. Is it, how does it work? Is there outdoor? Somebody said to me, well, they saw folks that just had a couple of drinks on the table. Do you have to order food? The restaurants, because it's outdoor dining for restaurants, it has to be table seating. So somebody has to take you to a table. Somebody has to, they don't have to take you to the table. They can tell you to take a table. But somebody has to bring you your food and drinks. There's no open mingling. There's no sort of open bar where you can just walk up and order a drink and bring it back to your table. You have to be sat somewhere. You're limited to 6 people at a table, not by household. And the place is limited to the number of seats that they have. It's not to say they couldn't add another table, but they couldn't just say, well, 60 people can fit in this open area. Just go there and mingle. You have to go there and you have to be sat at a table, but you can drink, you can eat. Some places are actually limiting the amount of time folks are doing because they just want to make sure people get a chance to go in, which I think is needed in a good thing. I think the outdoor dining is going great. We love seeing people outdoors at night, eating outdoors. And every restaurant that's been doing it every day gets a little bit better. We know it was a little unsightly at a few places early on, but as they're starting to decorate and they're getting more planters and plants in and better ropes and better lighting, it's really starting to come along. For 4 days, I think we're in an incredible place. KT, the library is looking for donations of plastic shopping bags to help facilitate curbside pickup. Our library was one of the first in the state to get back up and running with curbside pickup. There are still libraries that haven't even started that around the state. We rushed to make sure we could get it, so if you are a library member, you can get curbside pickup. They do need plastic bags. I believe, and Kate, I'll ask you to correct me if I'm wrong, you can bring the plastic bags to Town Hall, or do you want them to just go right to the library? We'll get you that specific information. Oh, there's a few people already asking that question. I'm ahead. And by the side door between 9 and 1, any weekday. That is the answer. We all have that bag somewhere of plastic bags, even though many of us have been using reusable bags for a while. I think I have a 20-year supply of plastic bags under my sink, so I'll bring some too. Question from Elan, did Select Board pass or fail? It actually failed, which I think was a little surprising. There was a non-binding referendum to change the name of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board, and it actually failed by a little over 300 votes. I guess that's one of the things I love about elections. You never do know what to expect. We know that Matt Lane was elected to the Select Board and Helen Donahue was not re-elected. It was she was off for a year, but elected again to the Select Board. And the difference between Helen and Debbie Homewood was only about 20 votes. So voting matters. It was incredible to see an election come that close with only 20 votes, and then the Selectman question failed, which was very surprising. And I encourage you to call the library if you do want, or check out the library's Facebook page and website if you do want the curbside delivery, curbside pickup program. Again, we were one of the first libraries to get that up and running. Question here. I'm voting last couple of days for the towns. I love how cleaning the plastic bag, everything be safe. Well, thank you, Layla. We appreciate that. We've been working as hard as we can, and then we owe it to all the town staff and to the residents for being great as well for the election going well. I mean, we had an election. We got outdoor dining up and running. I mean, it's been busy times here at Town Hall. There's a couple other things we're going to talk about as well. So we're doing well. It's a great community, and I think we should all be happy and proud to live in such a great community. In addition, Sunday night, we held a prayer vigil on the town common. There were probably about 300 people here for the vigil. And it was to pray for peace and justice with everything that's been going on in the world. And there's some good things that are kind of come of this. That was sort of put together by Jeff Baguma, who's one of our police officers. He had reached out to some clergy and the chief and I and a few other folks and wanted to do something about recognizing the Black lives that have been lost to police violence in the country, and to sort of come together as a community and talk about what we can do about race and racial justice and racial equity. And it was a wonderful event. It was about 2 hours. There was a wide section of community there. Wasn't advertised all that much. The event sort of came into existence on Thursday night with a working group, and within 3 days we got a good crowd there. And it was a good event. It's on NCM. If you have not watched it, I highly, highly encourage you to watch it. And in terms of good things to come for that, Officer Baguma is going to be heading up our efforts for the next couple of months. We've allowed him to rearrange his schedule as needed, focusing on race and equity in the community and what we can do to have a conversation around race and to talk about race and the police and the community and how we all view race and how we talk about race, which is a complicated conversation to have. To that end, we had a couple of students who spoke Sunday at the vigil, and they're going to be joining they're all Norwood High students. They're going to be joining our summer intern program and working with Officer Baguma and my office on a variety of initiatives. You're going to see a dedicated social media platform come out. You're going to see some community conversations around race and some education about race. And there's a lot of good things to come of it, all being done organically here in Norwood, headed up by Officer Baguma and some of the brightest students we have at Norwood High. You know, they really are the future. They're going to lead us to the future we need to go in, we need to be in. So good things to come. There's another working group meeting shortly. So there's a lot of good things to come with that for the community as well. And kudos to them for their work doing. Plastic shopping bags, grocery sizable quarantine bags for the appropriate time. Thank you, Charlotte, our library director. I do have a sad note that our library director will be retiring in, I believe, January. So Charlotte has been with us for more than 10 years. And she's been a fantastic library director and really done great things with the library. So we're sad to see Charlotte go. We've tried to get her to stay longer, but she's been looking forward to retirement and spending the time with Jerry. And she wants to spend more time reading. I mean, who would have thought that a librarian would want to retire to spend more time reading? But we are going to miss Charlotte when she does retire later in the year. But she's free to stay for another 10 or 15 years if she wants to. Retirement is for the birds. But thank you, Charlotte, for everything you have done. Plastic bags to the library. Hello, Daddy's Dairy. Everything is opening up again, and we're happy to see that everything is opening up again. We just want people to continue to be safe. Again, we know that there's going to be that urge to not wear your mask. Please continue to wash your hands. We should have always been doing that. The mask thing may be new, but really the hand washing thing we should have been doing all along. So if you haven't been doing that, please continue to do that. It's going to be tough to continue to wear your mask. I know they get hot, but please do so. Please stay home when you're sick and practice other good hygiene, just generally practicing good hygiene. That's very important to making sure that we can continue to stay open and enjoy being able to go into stores and outdoor dining again. We did get a question, do we know when indoor dining will open up? That's phase 2.5 or 2B. The governor seems to change the phases at random. We don't know. Phase 3 was originally supposed to be 3 weeks after phase 2 if the numbers held. The numbers do seem to be going in a good direction, but we don't know when phase 2 is exactly going to happen, although I haven't heard anything today, so they could have made an announcement today. But things will come if we continue to see good numbers and positivity, and we're just going to continue to have good practices when and where we can. Any word on when the library will be open for browsing? Not yet. So we have a couple of challenges with opening a facility like the library. It's given the social distancing that's needed, and given the restrictions on what we can do, it just becomes challenging to open it at a much reduced number. So we also have staff who have to take vacation. We haven't had staff who have been able to take vacation for a while, so we don't want to open until we're ready and safe. I anticipate it being a couple of weeks at least probably after the 4th of July. We're going to continue the curbside. We'll do whatever we need to do to get that ramped up, and we're going to continue the online. We've expanded our online book access account. I forget the name of the program here. I think it's Hoopla. I could be wrong. So we're going to continue doing that, but we just don't want to open some of our buildings until we're ready to, until we're safe to. Where it's a little challenging for us is we're not a retail store, so we have some old buildings. The library's in great shape, but it's a library. It's tough to open it and make it actually work for folks. But we will get it. We will get it open as soon as we reasonably can. Town Hall is not going to be open for some time for a couple of reasons. One, it's taking us quite a while to rearrange offices to be able to have all of our staff in and maintain social distancing. This is a 90-year-old building, built only about 10 years after the last pandemic. We've got some work to do in the building. The elevator for this building is going to be down for around 6 weeks. They've already started work on it, so Town Hall will be a while, but we'll get it up and running. Town Hall may be Labor Day at this point. But the library, we'll get it open when we can. We do miss the Sarah, good point. We do miss the browsing as well. And as Charlotte said, you can call a librarian with a list of books, and they'd be more than happy to help you out. The library, like all of our departments, is doing everything it can to help people and get books out to people, and we'll continue to do that. Other questions we got. So this is an interesting question. What have we been doing for small businesses? And there's a number of things. I really got to give credit to our Planning and Economic Development Department. That is Paul Helkiotis, our planning director, Patrick DeShane, the assistant planner, Ramonda Morgan, who is the senior admin for that department, and Joe Collins in my office, who heads up some economic development initiatives for my office. They've been posting, we very early on were posting information about restaurants that were open. We've been sharing a lot of the information that we've been getting both with the chamber and to the chamber and businesses about the PPP loans and other small business administration programs. We've done a couple of webinars around them. Planning and Economic Development headed up the process to redo our outdoor dining regulations, so they sort of took that bull by the horns and actually did the yeoman's work in that process. We've applied for some federal grant money. We're hopeful that we'll get it. We don't have the same level of grant access that larger cities do. One of the other things specifically that we're doing for business, we've actually held a back to business forum with local businesses this week. We also held two separate sessions with restaurants in town that were very well attended by the restaurants, just about the health regulations, about how to get open, how to make the outdoor dining work. We probably had almost 40 restaurants at each of those. Those were all being led by the Planning and Economic Development Department for our small business program. We also have a COVID-19 small business grant program. We have some funding available for grants to small businesses. They have to be a local Norwood business with less than 35 employees, less than $1.5 million in annual revenue, roughly, experience a serious loss as a result of COVID, and they can apply for up to a $4,000 grant to help offset any costs with their business. We're trying to push restaurants to do it for outdoor dining to help them with that side, that cost. But we encourage you to apply. I believe the grant opens on the 10th, and the initial grant deadline is the 19th. It'll be a lottery system because we're anticipating more applications than we'll have funds available. But we were able to secure or use an existing $75,000 in funds from the Department of Housing and Community Development that we have for business retention for economic development. So we encourage folks to do that. We are looking at other funds that we'd like to be able to use as well as grant funding. We've posted the page there in the link for the support for small businesses. So if you are a business with a physical presence in town, we encourage you to do it and to supply it, to apply for it. And worst case scenario, it's a little bit of time and there's nothing that comes of it, but you might be able to get a small grant to help get back up and running for retail and restaurants. Great question from Kate. Is the town concerned that there could be an increase of positive tests because of the peaceful demonstrations in Boston, especially because of the close contact and some folks not wearing masks? That's certainly a possibility. We don't know. So it's an interesting sort of epidemiological study on what that spread would look like and where would it be. So if you had those same marches in February, and of course I don't think you would because February was freezing, but if you had 20,000 people on a street in February, this past February, how many of those people were COVID positive versus how many are going to be COVID positive today? And I don't know what the number difference is. So you assume that maybe it's less because you have some people who have already had it. You have some people who we assume have the immunity. You then add on that while not everyone was wearing masks, that same protest this last week versus 4 months ago, there are still some people wearing masks, whereas a couple of months ago, nobody would have been wearing masks, at least not for a health reason. So the risk would be lower than if it had been done, and maybe February is a bad example because it was freezing in February, but if that same protest or series of protests had been last year, I think it would have been very different than this year. So you're reducing the risk in that sense. The answer is we just don't know. It could happen. It'll be a couple of weeks out before we see if there was a spread. Open air is generally safer than if you had been in a building, but you're right, a whole lot of people together could end up being a large spread. Now, some of the studies that are out there are showing that they're wondering if public transit was actually one of the main ways that things spread early on. And remember, public transit, you're crammed into a train car, you're very close to people, and there's all these people going into Boston and out of Boston, and into Boston and out of Boston. And I think, I've never been a regular train commuter, but you take the red line in, you take the green line, you take the commuter rail, you see some of the same people, but there's always different people that you're sitting with and you're near. So 5 days of heavy spread on public transit is likely to create a huge issue. Probably one of the reasons you saw higher rates in Boston and New York and to a certain extent in DC than you did in LA, which is a much more spread out city. Seattle has had some high numbers. Seattle is developed in a very different way where you have sort of residential throughout the entire city, whereas Boston and New York, you have your more traditional finance districts and commercial districts. That's all speculation on my part. I'm not an expert on epidemiology, but it's possible you could see numbers uptick from that. We anticipate you'll see numbers uptick from the population just being out and about, but it depends on who's still COVID positive and what percentage of the population is still positive and able to transmit. And the short answer is we just don't know. The virus tends to hit several people and then it sort of dies out. So how many people currently have it? Remember, the new case number that comes out is new cases, but the total case number still includes everyone that's already had it. So our number in Norwood, I think, is around 580. That number includes me. I believe I was case number 2. I just missed first place here in Norwood. So it's tough to say what a new case number is and at any given time how many people have it. So that's remains to be seen. Certainly going to be interesting to see where those numbers go. And the library does miss their patrons too, so everyone wants to get back to the new normal. I don't think we'll ever get back to exactly what normal was. I know talking to some of the restaurant owners, they were happy to just see some of the regulars and see people and have people going back to work. And we're hoping that there'll be a positive economic bump from that, that you'll see people returning to work and those unemployment numbers will come down and that we can start to get the economy moving back again. And maybe we're fortunate in Norwood that there won't be too much long-term economic devastation. Certainly we can never quantify that in the number of lives that have been lost as a result of COVID. But hopefully we can get back to the new normal as soon as we can, and the new normal will be safer than where we were. Another question from Sarah, a couple town meeting questions. Is the book available online? I'm not 100% sure if it's available online. If it's not, it will be by tomorrow. We have been distributing the book to town meeting members, and we're going to do a presentation probably next week or so. And that'll be just a sort of a shortened version of the general government budget. The school committee and the FinCom have prepared their presentations ahead of time, so that way we don't have to sit through them at town meeting. And we're asking folks that normally speak, Congressman Lynch, Representative Rogers, to just skip it for this year. They can come see us in the fall so we can just get in and get out. So we'll get the book online. If it's not, town meeting members should be having it delivered, I believe, this week. Has informal polling indicated a quorum is likely? Yes. So there's two answers to that. The first thing is the informal polling has indicated that a quorum is likely. The selectmen will also be taking up on Tuesday evening the question of lowering the quorum. We've been given the authority by the state as a result of some statutory changes to lower the quorum to as low as 10%. We think we're going to do that just to make sure we can get town meeting over and done with. We still want everyone to come to town meeting. That's not an excuse not to go to town meeting, but we know some people may be concerned, and even if you have the folks who don't have the health, who aren't maybe concerned about health because they know that either they're not immunocompromised or they're good with the safety precautions, things are kind of up in the air right now. Kids are out of school, but camps aren't up and running yet, and some people are going back to work, some people are not going back to work. So we understand that. We think reducing the quorum and that mind you, that relates to this year's town meeting. That's not a permanent change in the quorum level. That's only for the state of emergency. We think that'll allow us to just get in, get the budget passed, even if it's a lower amount of people, and get out. one of the other concerns we had with even doing an outdoor town meeting is if we did that, what if we then didn't have quorum? Then we're just continuing to go in the cycle. If we just got to get the budget done and passed, we do it every year. It's pretty vanilla this year. And then in the fall, so those of you who are town meeting members, Sarah is an example, expect more meetings in the fall as we go through our bylaws, our land use changes, and some other items. So we're going to have hopefully a really short, quick town meeting right now, but we're really just passing that time on to the fall, and we'll look at how things look in the fall. We may do like 1 or 2 nights in September, 1 or 2 in October, and 1 or 2 in November to see how things work out and not to be too disruptive to folks. So it is going to be shorter now, but it will be shorter down the road. The outdoor seating available, there was no, we decided against doing certain outdoor seating for certain folks because the complexity of trying to manage indoor and outdoor seating just logistically would have been challenging, and then you need to appoint deputy moderators. Again, if you're a high-risk individual, now here's the interesting, if you're high risk, you really, you probably shouldn't come out, and I wouldn't encourage people not to go to town meeting, but remember, if you're high risk, you're really supposed to still be staying home. So I love town meeting too. I wouldn't jeopardize health for town meeting. The idea is that this is just a sort of, we got to get it done, and then in the fall we can have our speeches and we can show up late and have a real good town meeting and have 5 nights talking about a zoning article. Now's not really the time for that. We also want to look at preserving town meeting, which means we've got to be adaptable, we've got to be a little flexible. Sometimes we just have to come in, get our business done, and call it a day. And then in the fall, we'll probably have 6 or 7 nights throughout the course of the fall on a number of town meeting related issues. At least I know we have, I have several things up on my wall. We have a couple of small land sales that need to go happen. We need to look at our veterans extensions. There's a small zoning change, a property sale, something about fees. There's the infrastructure plan, there's the capital plan. So this fall will be a good town meeting, and hopefully we'll be in a safe place to have a good, thorough town meeting this fall. My encouragement for everyone on June 22nd when we have town meeting, please come prepared. Please come prepared to vote. Let's get in, get out, get our job done, and get out and go on with whatever summer's going to look like. Electronic voting for fall. I got to talk to the town meeting rules committee. We could make that happen. We've talked about that before. That might not be a bad idea. I'd be all for the electronic voting at town meeting. It just needs to make sure it records the name of the person who does it. And I know some folks have said that they didn't like that, but if you're an elected town meeting member, that's just it. You're an elected town meeting member. You're an actual elected official in a legislative body. The public need to know how you voted. So we can look at queuing that up for the fall. There had been a study group, and we were going to look at it for this year, but as you know, COVID just kind of threw everything aside. But I think electronic voting, I think, would be a good idea. Most towns have done it without a problem, and it'll make it a little bit easier. It'll hopefully reduce the need for those standing count votes, which those of you who are not town meeting members, that's when you can't tell by a voice vote who's how an article passed, so you got to get everyone to stand, and then certain votes where you need to know whether it's 2/3 for land use or 9/10 for prior year's bills. You then need to have everyone stand up, and you appoint people to count. I mean, it's kind of fun in the sense that it's really an old school way of doing it. It hasn't changed in town meeting in decades, but sometimes it would help us just get through the mundane parts of town meeting and focus on what's important, because we want to preserve town meeting as an institution of government, and to do that we have to make it functional, and we have to be a little bit adaptable and flexible. So I think we can definitely make that happen, and we'll have to maybe over the summer we can have a meeting to talk about making town meeting a little bit more efficient. I believe that, oh no, I have a second page here. I did mention our outdoor dining was up and running much earlier than some other communities. We got a call from a nearby community a couple days ago that said they had nothing, and could they look at our regulations. So if they're just looking at it now, I can only imagine what they're going to go down. Central Street, we had talked about, we'll be closing Central Street in front of the theater weekends and placing out tables starting not this weekend, but tentatively the following weekend once we get everything worked out. We've also got to work with a couple of the businesses down there to make sure we're meeting their needs, but that'll create a great outdoor seating area for a lot of the takeout places around there. We are still looking into the possibility of whether we could close Washington Street Saturdays in July and August. It's possible. It's a lot of logistics. We have to make sure that the businesses would be supportive of that. So far, they've indicated they have. So we're queuing that up as sort of once we get Central Street set, we want to have that up and running. We would need to hear from the businesses on Washington Street that they'd be okay with that. There'd be some pushback that folks may want to be able to drive down Washington Street on a Saturday night, but we're trying to create a livable place for downtown and try to give these businesses the best shot we can to help them make it. So we'll hopefully have more information on that in a week or two. We haven't brought that to the board yet, and we're still working with some of the businesses on the logistics of it, but we think we've mapped out a plan to make that happen Saturday nights in July and August, and maybe a little bit into September. Another question I actually asked earlier, when would phase 2.5 start or 2 be? The short answer is we don't know. I don't believe the governor announced anything today other than some grant announces. Interesting question here, back to our COVID numbers. Other states have experienced spikes in COVID cases and hospitalizations. What can we residents do to prevent this from happening en masse? Again, practice good social distancing, wear masks, stay home when you're sick. If you have a cold, by all means, go ahead and stay home, get tested, be safe. Even when you have a sniffle, I tested positive for COVID-19. I had a cold for 2 days in February that I assumed was just a cold like any other and would have went about my business. So I think the norm needs to change. And if you think you have a cold, it's not just, oh, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to have a cold. And I know that's tough for people who don't get compensated if they don't go to work, but you really got to stay home if you have a cold. Thoughts on Norwood Day? I'd be willing to bet that there's probably a no on Norwood Day. Large outdoor festivals like that technically aren't allowed until phase 4. One of the qualifiers for phase 4 is that there is a vaccine available. So I don't know if we're going to be ready for that yet. Phase 4 could come the end of August. The challenge with Norwood Day becomes all the logistics and the fundraising to put it into place need to happen sooner rather than later. It's similar to the 4th of July parade. So if we can make it happen, we will. We may look at other events. We may look at closing Washington Street Saturdays in the summer and maybe into the fall as sort of a, if it's warm enough in the fall, as sort of an alternative. Maybe we look at something to do. It might be tough to do it the way we're used to it this way. We don't know what our numbers are going to look like in a couple of months. We don't know if we're going to be back phases, which we don't want to happen. And we don't know exactly what the regulations are going to be at that time. Like anything, we'd love for it to happen if we can do it safely. We're just not sure. I'd say probably not, but that doesn't mean we won't do something related to Norwood Day. And again, we have the question here, sorry, I answered earlier, town hall opening. Town hall may not be, all of our town hall services are available either online or by appointment or by calling. Town hall physically won't be open for quite a while. Can you get Moderna to record a video for the town regarding their vaccine since it was developed here? I believe if you go to their website, they actually have, Moderna's a biotech company in town, they actually have a video on their website that explains exactly what they're doing. It's pretty interesting. It gets into how their RNA process works. I don't know if I can find that link. I have it somewhere, but they have an interesting video that explains it in sort of layman's terms, because once you start talking about RNA manipulation, it goes way above my head. Their video I was able to understand as somebody who, I'm technically a scientist. I did study political science in school, but they didn't exactly teach us about RNA vaccines and how that works. But we'll see if we can find that link. If you check out their website, at least as of it's probably at this point about a month or two ago, they did have a great little video explaining exactly how it works. They're preparing for their phase 3 clinical trials in July, which is sooner than anticipated. The federal government is allowing them to have an expedited process. They're going to be testing their vaccine, I believe, on 30,000 people in July. No idea how they're doing that or how that exactly works. That's all regulated by the federal government. But that could be good. If those test studies look good, we could see a vaccine this fall, and we could see production ramping up for the fall, and that would be wonderful to know. And it would be wonderful to know that that was manufactured here in Norwood. Their corporate offices are in Cambridge, but we like to think of it as, if it works, a Norwood-based cure. So Norwood could be on the map for the vaccine to cure COVID, or to prevent COVID, I guess I should say, since the vaccine. We'll take a look for that link, Doris, to see if we can get that out to you, but I'd check out their webpage. It's a real great little video that they put together. And if you check out, Moderna is actually hiring. They have a lot of open positions, some in Cambridge, but quite a few here in Norwood. They're very, at least to me, they're complicated jobs that require degrees in biology and chemistry, but they have a lot of other support staff. So I'd actually check out their website. They're hiring and they're expanding in Norwood as well. So we're happy to have them here, and hopefully they're successful with a vaccine. That will be great news for us. All right, I've reached the end of my list except for one item. I keep saying I've reached the end of the list except for one item. The Citizen Call Center is open, 781-352-2363. We're changing out some of the staff. We had some staff working on it who have been reassigned back to their original positions as we start opening things up slowly. But we're going to keep the call center running. The numbers haven't changed on the call center, so it's an indication that the info has gotten out there. We're going to be changing some of the folks working on the call center, and thanks to all the staff and volunteers we've had who have been doing the call center so far. But we're actually going to likely keep that running into the fall for a couple of reasons. One, we've always wanted to look at developing sort of a 311 or citizen information center, and we developed this one in the context of an emergency, but we like it as just a way to call, make sure you can talk to somebody, ask a question, and somebody will get back to you with an answer. You can obviously call town departments and call town hall anytime, but the Citizen Information Center lets you call with a question that we can connect you to other services, and if you're not sure who to call, you can at least call the Citizen Information Center, and we can direct you to who may be the right person if it's not something they can answer there. So we're going to look to keep that going well into the fall, which we're excited about. It's actually a really efficient, low-cost model and low-cost way to be able to get that information to citizens, and it's all done remotely. We'll just have people, even if they're working at Town Hall, continue to do it remotely. They'll have one of the phones and access to it for the Citizen Information Center. So by all means, call them, 781-352-2363 for the Citizen Information Center. It's a great resource. Also, we have been doing more robocalls than we've done in the past. We've been using our reverse 911 system. We've talked about it for a while. We've never done a lot of calls with it, but we're looking to use it more. So if you have any thoughts on that, or if you enjoy it, or if you think it's useful for that information, by all means, let us know. We got calls out about the election this year, which we haven't done before. We think that may have, people have reported to us at least that they got the call and they remembered to vote. So we may look at doing that in the future as well. And I believe that's all I have for questions on my sheet, finally, as I've said that 3 or 4 times. So I'd be more than happy to take a few minutes. If anyone has any other questions in the comments about anything, we would be more than happy to answer them. As we wait for comments, I'll just run through a couple of quick things. COVID numbers are going good. Town meeting will be in the gym with a reduced quorum. Camps and pools open. Feed Norwood, the drop-off is tomorrow. The Citizen Call Center is open, 781-352-2363. And outdoor dining has begun, so go visit a local restaurant and dine outdoors and enjoy it when the weather's good. It still looks a little cloudy today, so today may not have been a very good day for it. But by all means, head outside and check out the dining options if you can. If you're struggling, if you're having any problems, if you have any needs or any concerns, food security or anything else, just call the Citizen Information Center and we will find a way to get some form of assistance to you. All right, if we have no further questions, and I always say that when 1 or 2 pop out, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. We're at about 52 minutes, which is usually where we stop. You can always email questions into managers@norwoodma.gov, managers@norwoodma.gov. You can post them here in the comments and we will get back to them. And you can always just reach out to us for anything you need. We are here to help and we are here to serve. With that, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, even if it may be a little rainy. I hope you have a great weekend, and let's hope for some great weather so you can get out and enjoy these outdoor dining facilities that we have. And stay tuned for some great things to come from the town on outdoor dining, on outdoor activity, and on a more important but more serious note on some of the racial equity efforts we're going to be looking at, and race and justice issues in the community as well. With that, I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I'll stick around for a minute, but everyone feel free to sign off and have a great weekend. And be sure to support local businesses like Honeydew in Norwood, locally owned and operated. And one last plug for our small business grant program, small businesses with a commercial presence in Norwood. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Feel free to keep emailing us any questions you have and reach out to the town if there's anything you need or we can help you with. Take care, everyone.